At the reading of the will, my daughter screamed, "You don't deserve this. You never deserved it," when she heard her grandfather had left me a check for $52 million. Then she grabbed a candle and set the check on fire right in front of the whole family. That moment was meant to humiliate me, to prove me weak, backward, powerless. I stood there in silence while everyone watched, and my daughter smiled as if she had finally won. But I didn't yell or stop her, because what she didn't know was before the flame touched the check, I had quietly made a decision. And once that decision was made, everything would change completely. I really appreciate you being here and giving this story a moment of your time. Before we continue, take a second to comment where you're watching from. It helps create a sense of connection here. And just so you know, this story includes fictional elements added for storytelling and reflection. Any similarity to real people or places is coincidental, but the ideas behind it may still resonate. I'm Silas Ravenscroft, 52 years old, and I just watched my daughter burn what she thought was $52 million, my inheritance, in front of our entire family. What she didn't know, what nobody in that room except me understood, was that you can't destroy money that's already been transferred electronically 2 weeks ago. My father warned me this moment would come. He planned for it. The reading took place exactly 1 week after we buried Dad in the family plot, overlooking the valley he'd spent 60 years building his company around. His study still smelled like leather old books, and the faint trace of cigars he'd given up 20 years ago, but never quite washed out of the mahogany paneling. 14 of us squeezed into that space, sitting on chairs Benjamin Shaw had arranged in a careful semicircle. Benjamin sat at Dad's desk, looking older than his 60-something years. He'd been Dad's attorney for 30 years, and right now his face carried the weight of whatever bombshell was about to drop. I knew that look. Dad had shown me the same expression 6 months ago, when he first told me what he'd planned. My daughter Madison sat front and center wearing a black Armani suit. At 28, she'd inherited Dad's sharp features and my late mother's dark hair, but none of the humility either of them possessed. Her fingers drummed against her knee, impatient, entitled, already counting money she believed was hers by birthright. Amanda, my older sister, perched beside Madison like a proud mentor. She'd been grooming Madison for years, convinced that Dad's fortune should skip my generation entirely. The two of them had spent countless Sunday dinners discussing how Madison would modernize the company, expand into new markets, finally bring Ravenscroft Industries into the 21st century, as if the 23% year-over-year growth under my leadership meant nothing. My wife Jennifer sat across from me, elegant even in grief. Marcus, our 24-year-old son, kept checking his watch. He'd wanted to skip this entirely. Dorothy, Dad's older sister, occupied the wingback chair near the fireplace, her sharp eyes missing nothing despite the wheelchair. Benjamin cleared his throat and began with the small bequests. Dorothy received the beach house plus $75,000 annually. Several longtime employees got $10,000 each. Various cousins received $25,000. Jennifer got Dad's art collection and $500,000. Marcus received $1 million in trust until age 35 plus Dad's vintage medical equipment collection. With each reading, the tension climbed higher. Madison's leg bounced faster. The big assets, the company, the real money remained unmentioned. Then Benjamin's voice shifted, taking on the formal tone reserved for major pronouncements. To my son, Silas Ravenscroft, I leave 51% of voting shares in Ravenscroft Industries, along with liquid assets totaling approximately $52 million. With specific conditions to be disclosed, the room erupted. Madison's face transformed from anticipation to shock, to something darker, rage mixed with betrayal. She shot to her feet, hands clenched. Marcus looked at me, relief flooding his expression. Jennifer's hand found mine. Even Dorothy leaned back with what might have been approval, but Madison's voice cut through the murmurs like glass. This is a joke. Grandpa wouldn't. He knew Dad's been coasting for decades. He promised me I'd lead this company. Amanda squeezed Madison's arm, but my daughter shook her off, her eyes locked on me with pure contempt. You don't deserve this. You never did. Benjamin raised a hand. Ms. Ravenscroft, there are additional provisions, but Madison had already spotted the oversized ceremonial check propped on the desk behind him. Dad had insisted on it, a theatrical touch that seemed ridiculous until now. $52 million printed in large block letters made out to Silas Ravenscroft. She grabbed it with both hands before anyone could react. The memorial candle we'd lit for Dad sat on the side table. She snatched it up, her movements sharp with fury. You want to know what I think of this? The corner of the check caught fire, first curling inward with a soft whoosh. Orange flame crawled across Dad's signature, across the numbers that represented more money than most people see in a lifetime. Madison held it as long as she could, staring at me the entire time, before dropping the burning mass into the metal waste bin. Smoke rose in a thin column, carrying the acrid smell of burning paper. The room fell absolutely silent. I smiled. I couldn't help it. A small, knowing smile that must have looked completely out of place. Everyone turned to stare at me. Jennifer's eyes widened. Marcus looked confused. Amanda frowned, searching my face for the devastation she expected. Madison's expression shifted from triumphant to uncertain. What's funny, You destroyed a photograph, Madison. My voice came out calmer than I felt. A very expensive photograph, but just paper nonetheless. Her face went pale. What? Benjamin cleared his throat. If I may clarify, the oversized check was purely ceremonial. The actual inheritance transfer was executed electronically 2 weeks before Mr. Ravenscroft's passing, following standard trust protocols. Nothing that happened here today affects the legal transfer of assets. I watched my daughter's triumphant expression collapse like a sandcastle hit by a wave. Amanda whispered urgently in her ear, but Madison shook her off, staring at the smoking remains. However, Benjamin continued, reaching for a sealed envelope I recognized from months ago. Mr. Ravenscroft did leave instructions for a video message to be played at this time. Madison's face went from pale to ashen. Amanda's composure finally cracked. Marcus leaned forward, suddenly interested. Jennifer's hand found mine, squeezing once. Benjamin set up his laptop on the desk, adjusting the screen so everyone could see. Madison remained standing, frozen. Amanda pulled her back down, but Madison moved like someone in shock. Her earlier confidence completely evaporated. The screen brightened. Dad's face appeared recorded probably weeks before he died, but looking healthier than those final days. His eyes held that particular sharpness I'd learned to respect, the look that said he was 3 moves ahead of everyone else. He folded his hands on the desk, the same gesture I'd unconsciously mimicked a moment ago, and began to speak. When my father's voice filled that room, I wasn't prepared for how it would feel, not the words themselves, because I already knew what he'd say. What caught me off guard was watching 14 people realize they'd been outmaneuvered by a dead man. Dad looked stronger on that recording than he had in those final hospital weeks. Someone had filmed this on one of his better days, probably early September, when the pain medication still worked, and his mind stayed sharp. He wore the navy cardigan Mom had given him decades ago, sitting in his hospital room chair. His eyes held that particular gleam I'd learned to recognize growing up, the look that meant he was teaching a lesson whether you wanted to learn it or not. Around me, everyone leaned forward. Madison had gone very still, her earlier confidence replaced by something that looked like dread. Amanda's hand remained on her shoulder, but the grip had changed from supportive to steadying. Marcus sat straighter, finally paying attention. Dad's voice came through Benjamin's laptop speakers with surprising clarity. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And if Benjamin followed my instructions, you've just witnessed something interesting. He paused, letting that sink in. Madison, you received the will as read. But that document... He leaned forward slightly. That was a test. Madison's breathing changed. I heard it from across the room, a sharp intake that didn't quite become a gasp. She started to rise, but Amanda pulled her back down. The actual distribution of my estate was executed separately 2 weeks before my passing, legally binding. Witnessed by 3 parties and certified by 2 independent physicians regarding my mental competency, because I knew someone would question it. He listed off the real inheritance then. 51% of voting shares in Ravenscroft Industries to Silas. All liquid assets, the entire $52 million to Silas, with specific provisions for Jennifer and the grandchildren. Madison would receive $5 million in a restricted trust, accessible at age 40, or upon demonstrating sustained financial responsibility. Madison, I needed to see how you'd respond. Dad's voice softened slightly. Would you be gracious? Think about the family, the employees, the legacy we've built? Or would you— He didn't finish that sentence. We'd all watched her burn what she thought was her inheritance less than 15 minutes ago. Silas, you've proven yourself countless times. This company is yours. Lead it well. And son— His voice cracked slightly. I'm proud of the man you became even when I didn't say it enough. The screen went dark. Benjamin closed the laptop with a soft click that sounded unnaturally loud in the absolute silence. Nobody moved. Madison stared at the blank screen like she could force it to play something different. Her face had gone from pale to flushed rage building behind her eyes. This is manipulation. He was sick, his mind wasn't clear. Benjamin's response came with practiced calm. 2 independent physicians certified his cognitive competency. There are 3 witnesses. The documentation is ironclad. This isn't contestable, Miss Ravenscroft. Madison whipped around to face me, and I saw something I'd never quite seen in my daughter's eyes before, not just anger, but desperate fury. You did this. You manipulated him when he was weak. I visited my father. I kept my voice level. I sat with him, listened to him. Something you rarely made time for between your work trips and networking dinners, because I was building the career he wanted me to have. You were becoming someone who'd burn $52 million in theatrical spite the moment you didn't get your way. That's what Grandpa needed to know, whether you cared about the legacy or just the paycheck. Amanda stood abruptly, positioning herself between us. This is unconscionable. A granddaughter cast aside, set aside for the person Dad trusted to protect his life's work, not the person who'd burn it to ashes in a tantrum. Madison's hand trembled as she pointed at me. So, I'm supposed to just accept being humiliated. You're supposed to accept that Grandpa made a choice based on character. Go to hell, Dad. She shoved past Amanda, nearly knocking over the waste bin that still held the ashes. The door slammed behind her. Amanda shot me a look before hurrying after her. The remaining family members began a hasty exodus. Within 5 minutes, only Jennifer, Marcus, Benjamin, and I remained. Marcus broke the silence. That was intense. Your grandfather specialized in intense. Benjamin began gathering his papers. Silas, your father left additional documentation for you. Instructions, contingency plans, and information about certain activities Madison was involved in before his passing that he'd been quietly investigating. Something cold settled in my chest. What activities? I think we should discuss this Monday morning. You've endured enough for one day. Jennifer touched my arm. He's right. Let's go home. That evening, I sat alone in my study, holding the pocket watch Dad had pressed into my hand during one of those hospital visits. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Ravenscroft, this is Derek Hamilton, CEO of MedCore Solutions. I heard about today's situation with your daughter. If she needs professional guidance during this difficult time, I'd be happy to help. Madison truly has potential. I stared at the message. Why would a rival CEO be reaching out about my family drama? The message felt wrong somehow, like concern masking calculation. I set the phone down without responding. Morning came too early. I woke to 5 missed calls from Benjamin and a voicemail that made my stomach drop. Silas Madison filed to contest the will this morning. We need to talk about those documents from your father. Call me immediately. Jennifer found me in the kitchen staring at my phone. It's starting, I told her. She's not going to accept this quietly. Did you think she would? No, but God, I hoped. I dialed Benjamin's number, listening to it ring while morning light streamed through the windows. What I didn't know then was that phone call would start me down a path I'd never wanted to walk. The path toward prosecuting my own daughter. That Saturday evening, sitting alone in my study, while my daughter hired attorneys to tear me apart, I found myself thinking about fishing, specifically those Sunday mornings Dad and I spent at Riverside Lake when I was young, just the two of us, and the still water, where he taught me everything that mattered. The city lights blinked through my window like distant stars. Somewhere across town, Madison was probably strategizing with lawyers, plotting how to prove Dad's will was fraudulent. The documentation Benjamin mentioned sat unopened in my briefcase secrets about my daughter I wasn't ready to face yet. Instead, I pulled an old photograph from the desk drawer yellowed at the edges, probably from the early 80s. A younger version of me stood on a weathered dock, holding up a large-mouth bass that looked enormous in my 10-year-old hands. Dad stood beside me, one hand on my shoulder, his smile quiet but genuine. Sunday mornings back then started before dawn. Dad would shake my shoulder gently, and I'd stumble into clothes that smelled like lake water and tackle boxes. The drive to Riverside Lake took 20 minutes through empty streets, the world still sleeping, while we chased the best hours of the day. We'd reach the public dock just as the sky started turning from black to navy. Dad taught me to move quietly during setup, not because fish could hear us from shore, but because silence had its own value. Some of my best memories involve no words at all, just the soft click of reels being checked and the whisper of line being threaded through guides. Son, you know why I bring you out here? He spoke finally once we'd both cast our lines into water, so still it looked like dark glass. To catch fish. That's the bonus. Dad settled into his folding chair. The real lesson is right here. Just you, patience and persistence. Everything worth having takes both. We sat there for hours, some mornings, sometimes catching nothing, sometimes pulling in decent bass. Dad taught me how to clean fish, too, the real work of it, understanding that good things require effort even after you've earned them. The people who succeed aren't always the smartest or the luckiest. He'd wiped his hands on an old rag. They're the ones who show up when it's hard, who do the work nobody sees, who stick around when everyone else goes home. I remember every word, every lesson. They sank into me deeper than any textbook ever could. The memory shifted, and suddenly I was older, 25, newly hired at Ravenscroft Industries, in a junior position despite being the boss's son. Dad had insisted I start at the bottom, learn every department before touching anything that mattered. That particular summer afternoon, we'd hosted a family barbecue. Jennifer was 6 months pregnant with Marcus. Madison toddled around the patio in a yellow sundress, 3 years old and absolutely fearless. Dad chased her around the garden, both of them laughing in a way I'd rarely seen him laugh with anyone. Amanda stood near me at the grill, watching them with an expression I couldn't quite read. She'd been living in New York for 2 years by then, visiting less frequently. He never looked at us like that. When we were kids, that adoration. Madison's his first grandchild. I kept my tone neutral. It's different. Is it, or did he just never like daughters much? Before I could respond, Dad scooped Madison up and carried her over to us. I lifted her into my arms, her weight barely anything, her hair smelling like baby shampoo. How did we get from that moment to burning checks? How does a 3-year-old who giggled at peekaboo become someone who'd try to destroy her grandfather's legacy? Dad and I found ourselves alone near the grill later, after Madison had been taken inside for a nap. You're doing good work at the company. He didn't look at me when he said it. I hear positive reports from the department heads. Thanks, Dad. I'm trying to earn my spot. You don't need to earn it, but I respect that you want to. He squeezed my shoulder, quick, firm, the same gesture he'd given me on that dock years ago. That was as close as Dad got to declarations of love in those days. The memories released me back into my study, the photograph still in my hand. I checked my watch, nearly 11. I'd been sitting there for hours, lost in times when things made more sense. I drove around for a while after that, no destination in mind, just needing to move. When I finally pulled into our driveway, Jennifer was waiting on the front porch, despite the late hour, wrapped in a cardigan against the October chill. Madison had been the adored granddaughter. I'd been the son who had to prove himself again and again. Both of us ended up resentful, her thinking she deserved everything, me fighting for anything I got. Dad had seen that. He'd always seen everything. The test he'd designed wasn't just about money or company shares. It was about whether we'd learned what really mattered from all those different lessons. My phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Your dad, Madison, just posted on social media. You need to see this. I opened her profile. The post had already gathered over 200 comments. And when family betrays you, when the system is rigged against you, sometimes you have to fight back. Watch this space. The real story is coming. Justice, family betrayal, speaking my truth. The photo showed her standing outside Benjamin's office, looking determined and wounded, a carefully curated image of righteous persecution. I set the phone down, exhaustion settling into my bones. Jennifer tapped on the car window, concern etched across her features. I climbed out, letting her take my hand as we walked toward the house together. I went to bed that night, not knowing that Madison's social media war was the least of my problems. Come Monday morning, I'd learn what my father had actually discovered about my daughter and why he'd been so certain about his final test. By Sunday morning, Madison's post had gone viral in the worst possible way. Half the internet calling me a thief, the other half debating inheritance law like suddenly everyone held a law degree. But the real story wasn't about money. It was about 15 years of me trying to prove I belonged in Dad's company while my daughter learned all the wrong lessons, watching from the sidelines. I should have recognized the entitlement creeping in, but I'd been too busy fighting my own battles to notice hers were just beginning. Marcus found me in the kitchen, around 8, phone in hand, expression somewhere between concerned and impressed. Dad, her post has 50,000 shares. Local news is picking it up. Madison's full statement read like a manifesto. My grandfather, Declan Ravenscroft, built an empire on integrity. Yesterday, I watched my father manipulate a dying man's final wishes. The legal system might side with him, but history will remember who truly deserved that legacy. Let them talk. I set my coffee down carefully. The facts don't need a publicist. Marcus studied me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You're not going to respond. What would I say that wouldn't make it worse? Your sister wants a public trial. I'm not giving her one. My mind drifted backward, the way it kept doing lately, sorting through years of moments that suddenly meant something different. I was back in a boardroom sometime in my mid-30s, presenting a healthcare division expansion I'd spent 6 months developing. The numbers were solid, the strategy sound, but I could feel the skepticism radiating from the board members before I'd finished the second slide. This approach seems conservative. Harrison Whitmore tapped his pen against the table. Perhaps we should wait for Declan's input before moving forward. Translation: we don't trust you to make decisions without your father's blessing. Dad had attended that meeting, sitting in the back corner like an observer. He'd said nothing during my presentation, nothing during the lukewarm discussion that followed. The proposal got tabled for further consideration, corporate speak, for shelved indefinitely. I'd found him afterward in his office, frustration making my words sharper than intended. That was a good plan, Dad. I know. He didn't look up from the contract he was reviewing. Then why didn't you support me in there? Because you don't need me to. He finally met my gaze. Prove them wrong with results, son. Words don't matter. Outcomes do. 6 months later, after I'd pushed a modified version through a different committee, that division reported record profits. Dad had nodded, once said, "Well done," and moved on. No celebration, no public vindication, just the quiet satisfaction of being right. I'd learned not to need the applause. Madison never did. The memory shifted to a family dinner when Madison was 16. She'd slouched at the table, pushing food around her plate with theatrical misery. "The volleyball coach has it out for me. I should have made varsity." "Did you attend the optional summer practices?" I'd kept my tone neutral. "I don't need extra practice. I'm naturally athletic." Dad had set down his fork then. "Talent without work ethic is just wasted potential, sweetheart. But Grandpa, you always say I'm special." Madison's eyes had filled with tears. "Why should I have to work twice as hard?" Across the table, Marcus had stayed quiet, but I'd noticed him stiffen slightly. He'd practiced voice exercises every single day for 3 months to prepare for his school's solo audition. Nobody had told him he was too special to need the work. The worst memory surfaced, last still raw, despite being only 4 months old. June of this year, when Madison had called me crying about a situation at work. She'd been caught taking credit for a colleague's research proposal at Pharmatech, her first real job out of graduate school. We'd met at a coffee shop near her apartment. She'd looked genuinely distressed, mascara-smudged hands shaking. "I just made some small edits, Dad. That's all. They're blowing this completely out of proportion." "Did you credit your colleague for the original work?" Her defenses had gone up immediately. "Why should I? I improved everything. Without my input, that proposal would have been garbage. In school, that's called plagiarism. In business, it's theft. You never take my side. Grandpa would understand that you have to do what's necessary to get ahead. Your grandfather built his business on integrity, not shortcuts. You wouldn't know anything about what Grandpa values. You've never been his favorite." She'd stormed out, leaving me with 2 untouched coffees and the sinking realization that she'd quit the job rather than apologize. I'd told myself she was young, still learning, that there was time for her to grow into better character. Dad had called me that evening after Madison had apparently complained to him. "She won't take responsibility for this." His voice had sounded tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. "Not now. Maybe not ever. You always defend her. I love her son, but I see her clearly. I see you clearly too." I hadn't understood what he meant then. Now I realized he'd already been planning the test, waiting to see if Madison would prove his concerns wrong. She hadn't. Marcus's voice pulled me back to the present. "Dad, you should see this." He'd pulled up a Reddit thread, anonymous accounts, discussing Madison's employment history. Several people who claimed to have worked with her at Pharmatech had started sharing stories pattern of taking credit, refusing feedback, leaving whenever confronted with consequences. She's inviting scrutiny on herself. I felt torn between vindication and something uncomfortably close to pity. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, still in her robe. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing. Not yet. Tomorrow I need to hear what Benjamin found. Then I'll know what we're actually dealing with." The phone rang before anyone could respond. Benjamin's name on the screen felt inevitable. "Silas Madison officially filed her contest this morning. She's hired Fletcher and Associates, very aggressive firm." How aggressive? Allegations of undue influence, diminished mental capacity, coercion. They're going scorched earth. Papers rustled on his end. "When can you come in to discuss the other documents?" "Tomorrow morning, 9 work. I'll be ready. Silas." He paused, choosing words carefully. "What your father discovered will change everything. You need to be prepared." The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, Jennifer watching me with questions in her eyes she didn't voice. Tomorrow I'll learn what Dad knew. Part of me doesn't want to. But you need to." She crossed the kitchen, took my hand. "Whatever it is, we'll handle it." "It will we? What if it's worse than we think?" Then it's worse. But you'll still need to know." She was right. Whatever Dad had uncovered about Madison, whatever had made him so certain about his final test, I'd know tomorrow. The waiting was almost over. Almost. Sunday evening, while Madison's social media army debated inheritance law and Jennifer put Marcus to bed, I sat alone with the pocket watch Dad had given me 3 weeks before he died. Before I could face whatever Benjamin would reveal Monday morning, I needed to remember how those final weeks had shown me exactly who everyone really was. Let me take you back to late September, 3 weeks before that will reading, when everything started. The call came on a Tuesday morning, September 28th. Sharon Mills, Dad's executive assistant, for 20 years, her voice shaking in a way I'd never heard. Silas, your father, collapsed. Ambulance is taking him to City General. I made it to the hospital in 15 minutes, Jennifer meeting me in the ER. The stroke had hit hard. Left side affected speech, impaired. The doctor's expression told me everything before his words confirmed it. Now, at his age with this severity, you should prepare yourself. Dad looked smaller in that ICU bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and hummed like they were having conversations he couldn't join anymore. His eyes opened when I took his hand, recognition flickering through the confusion. I'm here, Dad. I'm not going anywhere. I practically lived in that hospital room for 3 weeks. Brought my laptop, worked from the uncomfortable chair beside his bed, talked to him about company updates, news memories, anything to fill the sterile silence. The nurses started recognizing me, bringing extra coffee. Your father's lucky to have such dedicated family. I smiled, but said nothing. They'd see soon enough. Madison arrived on day 3 with expensive flowers and designer grief. She stayed 20 minutes, took a selfie with sleeping Grandpa, posted it, with hashtags about prayer and heroes. Her voice carried that particular performance quality I'd started recognizing. I have to get back to work. Important project deadline. I'll come back soon. She visited twice more in 3 weeks, never staying longer than an hour. By day 5, the vultures started circling. Amanda and Andrew appeared suddenly concerned after years of minimal contact. Amanda cornered me near the nurse's station. You look terrible. Have you been here the entire time? Someone needs to be. Very noble. Her tone suggested I was auditioning for sainthood rather than being a son. I'm sure Dad notices who's making sacrifices. When Dad woke during their visit, his speech had partially returned. Words came slowly, but clearly enough. Amanda. Andrew. His voice carried something between acknowledgement and dismissal. Dad, don't strain yourself. We're here for you. Whatever you need. Amanda leaned close, earnest and transparent. Where have you been? The last 5 years. Each word cost him effort, but he got them out. She left shortly after, flustered and defensive. Dad told me later when we were alone. All of them. Except Dorothy. And you. Cousins appeared asking about estate plans. Distant relatives offered to help manage things. Harold Carson visited, genuinely bringing news from the office, refusing to discuss business unless Dad asked first. Dorothy came once dignified, and Private said her goodbyes without mentioning money left quietly. Day 12 brought Benjamin Shaw with documents for a 90-minute private meeting. When I returned, Dad looked exhausted but satisfied. I'm done. Everything arranged. His strongest day came on day 15. The fog had lifted, leaving him sharp and determined. He waited until we were alone, monitors beeping their steady rhythm. Silas, need to tell you something. What is it, Dad? The will. It's not what it seems. I don't care about the will. Listen. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. Madison inherits, on paper. But that document, it's a test. I stared at him, not understanding. Oh, the real assets, already transferred. 2 weeks ago, legal, binding to you. Dad, what? Needed to see her nature. You, I know. She needed proof. Would she be gracious or... His eyes held sadness that went deeper than physical pain. I know what she'll do, but she needs to see what she could have been. He reached into the bedside drawer, pulled out his father's pocket watch, pressed it into my palm. My father gave me this. The inscription says, "Time reveals all truths. Wear it. You'll need patience for what's coming." My throat tightened. Dad, I don't want your watch. I want more fishing trips. A single tear tracked down his weathered face. Me too, son. But time's up. Catch one for me. That was our last real conversation. On October 19th, a Thursday evening, the monitors started changing their tune. The nurse's expression told me everything. Could be tonight. Call family. Jennifer came immediately. Marcus drove from his apartment across town. I called Madison, got voicemail, sent a text. Dad's declining. Hospital says tonight might be it. Her reply came 2 hours later. An important meeting. We'll try to come by morning. She won't make it, I told Jennifer. That's her choice. And her burden. At 4:23 Friday morning, October 20th, the machines changed pitch one final time. I held Dad's hand, Marcus on the other side, Jennifer at the foot of the bed. Dad's eyes opened once found mine. No words, just a squeeze of his fingers. I've got this, Dad. I'll take care of everything. A small smile, then stillness. The monitors went silent at 4:23. Madison arrived at 7:15, saw the empty bed. Did he? I nodded. I came as fast as I could. The meeting ran late, then to traffic. He died 3 hours ago, Madison. My voice came out hollow, scraped clean of everything except fact. She collapsed into grief that was real, but tangled up with guilt she'd never quite admit to feeling. By mid-morning, I stood outside the hospital, breathing fresh air for the first time in weeks. The pocket watch sat heavy in my pocket, warm from my body heat. Marcus found me there. Dad, you okay? No, but I will be. Grandpa made sure of that. What do you mean? You'll see. At the will reading, everyone will see exactly what Grandpa saw. Benjamin's email arrived later that day. Will reading scheduled Friday, October 27th, 2:00 p.m. All family required. Video message from deceased included. That was a week ago now. Sitting here Sunday evening with that same pocket watch in my hand, I understood what Dad had been preparing me for. Tomorrow morning, Benjamin would reveal what else he'd discovered about Madison. But those 3 weeks in the hospital had already shown me everything I needed to know about who showed up when it mattered and who didn't. The pocket watch ticked steadily in my palm. Time reveals all truths, just like the inscription said. Dad had known exactly what he was doing. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I'd barely slept, kept replaying those hospital weeks in my mind. At 8:30, my phone buzzed with a reminder about Benjamin's 9 o'clock call. But before I could face whatever audit findings he'd uncovered, my thoughts kept drifting back to the funeral held 3 days after Dad died, 4 days before that explosive will reading. If you want to know people's real nature, watch them at a funeral. Let me tell you about Dad's memorial. Monday, October 23rd. Riverside Memorial Chapel had been packed, over 200 people filling the largest room. Closed casket, massive photo of Dad in better days, enough flowers to stock a garden center. Harold Carson spoke first, this man who'd worked beside Dad for 32 years, voice shaking with genuine grief. Declan Ravenscroft gave me a chance when nobody else would. Fresh out of prison, trying to start over, and he hired me anyway. Harold wiped his eyes. He wasn't just my boss. He taught me business isn't only about profits, it's about people. Every employee mattered to him. He remembered our names, our families. That's rare. Simple, honest, real. That's who Dad actually was. Madison spoke second, elegant black dress hair, perfect, despite the performance of grief. Grandpa was the most important person in my life. He told me I was special, that I could lead, make a difference, carry forward his legacy. She paused for effect, tears glistening. Grandpa, wherever you are, I promise I'll honor what you built. I'll protect it. I'll make you proud. The audience responded exactly as she'd hoped. Tissues appeared. Amanda nodded approval, dabbing her eyes. I'd sat there calculating 2 visits in 3 weeks. Missed his death by 3 hours. Now promising to honor him. My turn came last. I kept it brief, fighting through the tightness in my throat. My father was complicated, demanding. But everything he did had purpose. He taught me real strength is quiet. Real success isn't measured by what you accumulate, but what you build that outlasts you. I held up the pocket watch. He gave me this the week before he died. His father's before that. The inscription says, "Time reveals all truths." Dad believed that. So do I. At the gravesite, rain started falling as they lowered the casket. Madison dropped a rose with theatrical precision. I placed a fishing lure private symbol he would have understood, Amanda's voice carried deliberately. Grandpa would be so proud of your eulogy, dear. He always said you understood his vision. The reception at our house drew the full crowd, catered food, appropriate murmurs, people clustering in groups. I caught fragments while standing with Marcus. Do you think the will's been filed yet? Amanda says Madison's the real heir. Harold found me near the study. Your father was prouder of you than you know. He talked about you constantly. The Henderson account you saved. The healthcare initiative. He'd say, that boy doesn't quit, just like me. He just wasn't good at saying it to your face. Across the room, a polished man in an expensive suit approached Madison. Mid-50s, silver hair. Amanda made introductions. Madison, this is Derek Hamilton. He runs MedCore Solutions. Derek, my niece, Madison Ravenscroft. Ms. Ravenscroft, my deepest condolences. Your grandfather and I were competitors, but I had immense respect for him. Derek's tone was perfectly calibrated. Thank you. Please call me Madison. I don't want to intrude, but if you ever want perspective on the industry from outside the family circle, I'd be honored to talk. Your eulogy showed real understanding of the business. Madison looked flattered. That's kind of you. I might take you up on that. My card. No pressure. I see potential in you. Your grandfather clearly did too. He withdrew with perfect timing. Amanda leaned close. He seems influential. Madison studied the card. Yes, he does. I'd watched from across the room, not recognizing him, but something about the exchange felt off. Late that afternoon, after guests left, I'd found Madison's sympathy card. Dad. Thanks for being there during Grandpa's final days. I know it was hard. I wish I could have been there more. Emma, brief flicker of hope. Maybe she understood. Then I saw her social media post. Artistic photo of her looking grief-stricken in perfect lighting. Saying goodbye to Grandpa, my hero. He believed in me when no one else did. His legacy lives on through me. Comments gushed support. She still didn't get it. All performance. That had been 4 days ago. Now it was Monday morning, and my phone was ringing. Benjamin Shaw, right on time at 9 o'clock. Silas, good morning. Did you review the audit file I sent Friday night? My stomach tightened. I read it 3 times. Tell me I misunderstood. You didn't. Benjamin's voice carried the weight of bad news delivered professionally. Your father discovered Madison had been accessing confidential company information without authorization. 6 months of activity. The patterns match intelligence that ended up with competitors, specifically MedCore Solutions. My blood ran cold. Derek Hamilton. That smooth introduction at the funeral suddenly made terrible sense. How bad is it? Bad enough that your father was considering criminal charges before he died. The documentation is ironclad. Corporate espionage, breach of fiduciary duty. We're looking at potential federal crimes. I stared out the window, processing. Madison hadn't just been entitled. She'd been actively betraying the company. What do I do? But that's what we need to discuss. In person. Can you come to my office this morning? Give me an hour. I hung up and sat there, pocket watch heavy in my hand. Dad had known. That's why he'd designed the test. He'd discovered what Madison was doing and needed to see if she'd show remorse, take responsibility, change course. Instead, she'd burned a check and declared war. Time reveals all truths. Dad had been right about everything. Let me take you back to Monday morning, October 24th, 3 days before that. Will Reading would expose Madison's character to everyone. That morning, sitting in Benjamin Shaw's downtown office, I learned my daughter hadn't just burned a symbolic check. She'd been burning bridges of ethics law and common decency for 6 months, while Dad quietly gathered proof. Benjamin had coffee waiting when I arrived at 9. The conference room felt heavy with bad news waiting to be delivered, autumn sunlight cutting through partially closed blinds. What I'm about to show you, your father commissioned this investigation 3 months ago before his health declined. He suspected something. Suspected what? That Madison was sharing Ravenscroft proprietary information with Medcore Solutions. Cold spread through my chest. Benjamin spread documents across the table, access logs, surveillance reports, financial analysis. Stephen Caldwell joined via video, his expression grim. Silas, I've conducted corporate investigations for 20 years. This is textbook corporate espionage. Sachs Madison worked for Pharmatech, not Ravenscroft. How could she? You gave her login credentials 2 years ago for a graduate school research project. They were never revoked. Memory hit me. Her MBA practicum, I trusted her. Not she accessed proprietary databases monthly for 6 months. Product development plans, pricing strategies, client lists. Everything she accessed Medcore acted on within weeks. The timeline appeared damning. Madison accessed Project Horizon details in April. Medcore launched competing product in May. Madison pulled client strategy in June. Medcore undercut our pricing in July. How long? Why 6 months. Started right after the Pharmatech incident. We believe someone, likely Derek Hamilton, saw an opportunity. Benjamin showed surveillance photos. Madison meeting Derek at upscale restaurants, coffee shops. The meetings predated Dad's death, predated any knowledge of inheritance. We recovered emails through legal subpoena prep your father initiated before he died. Derek to Madison. The information you've shared is invaluable. I appreciate your collaborative spirit. Madison to Derek. Happy to help. My father doesn't see my strategic value. Nice to work with someone who does. Oh, she thought she was being strategic. She didn't realize intent matters less than action. She accessed protected information without authority and shared it with a competitor. That's industrial espionage, theft of trade secrets. Stephen leaned forward on screen. Estimated impact over 12 million in lost contracts and competitive disadvantage. I held my head. 12 million, because she was angry at me. Your father discovered it early, changed some access codes, fed false information to test. It leaked. That confirmed Madison as the source. And Dad knew before he died. He knew she was doing this. Yes, it's part of why he structured the will as he did. Stephen disconnected. Benjamin reached for a sealed envelope on his desk. Then there's one more thing. Your father left this for you. He wanted you to read it after seeing the evidence. The envelope read, "To Silas, open after viewing investigation," in Dad's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Silas, if you're reading this, you know what Madison's been doing. I'm sorry you must learn this about your daughter. Here's what I want. Give her a chance to confess, to take responsibility. If she does genuinely, then mercy is deserved. Everyone deserves redemption. But if she continues lying, blaming others, refusing to face what she's done, then justice must come first. Protecting her from consequences isn't love, it's enabling. Trust your own judgment, son. You'll know what's right when the moment comes. I'm proud of you. Should have said that more often. Dad, I folded the letter slowly, eyes blurring. Called Jennifer. Can you come to Benjamin's office? I need you. 30 minutes later, Jennifer arrived. Benjamin summarized everything. Her shock transformed into heartbreak. Our daughter is a thief. Our daughter made terrible choices. There's a difference. What difference? She threatened people's jobs. She helped our competitor. Where did we go wrong? I don't know, but I know what I have to do. Benjamin laid out options. Report to authorities immediately. Handle internally. Or wait, see how the will reading goes, use it as leverage if needed. I pointed to Dad's letter. He wanted me to give her a chance to confess, and if she doesn't, then I turn this over to authorities and let justice decide. You're certain she's your daughter? That's exactly why I must hold her accountable. If I protect her, I'm telling her actions have no consequences. That's not fatherhood. That's cowardice. Jennifer wiped tears. I agree, but God, it hurts. I held her. Yes, it does. We left Benjamin's office in silence. In the elevator, Jennifer asked the question I'd been asking myself. Do you think she'll confess at the will reading or after? I looked at the pocket watch. We'll see who Madison really is. I hope for the daughter we raised. But I'm prepared for the person she's become. The elevator opened to bright sunshine. Either way, this ends soon. That evening at home, my phone rang. Madison. It's her, I told Jennifer. You going to answer? Yes. But I won't tell her what I know. Not yet. I picked up. Madison? Dad, about Friday, the will reading. Whatever happens, I hope we can still have a relationship. You're still my father. Madison, is there anything you want to tell me? Anything you want to get off your chest before Friday? Long silence. What, like what? I don't know. If there's anything you've done that you regret, anything you want to make right. Another silence. No. Why is something wrong? My heart sank. I'll see you Friday, Madison. I hung up. Jennifer met my eyes. She had her chance. Their dad was right. She won't confess. She'll fight. Friday wasn't just about money anymore. It was about character. And Madison was about to show everyone exactly what hers was worth. The next 3 days crawled by. Wednesday, Madison's attorneys filed motions. Thursday, social media erupted. By Friday morning, the whole city was watching. And I was ready. By Tuesday morning, Madison had weaponized her online presence. Posts detailing her victim narrative spread across every platform, professionally shot photos with defiant expressions, tearful videos recorded in her car, multi-part threads painting me as the manipulative villain. The engagement climbed into 6 figures within hours. 75,000 people had liked her carefully curated grief. 500,000 had watched her perform vulnerability. Half the internet was choosing sides before knowing any facts. Jennifer watched over my shoulder. She's building a narrative. By Friday, half the country will be on her side. Well, let them. Facts don't change based on popularity. But perception does. Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock, Marcus appeared at our door, looking like he hadn't slept. Dad, we need to talk. Coffee. Madison's been calling since 6 a.m. Texting too. Aunt Amanda's doing the same. His voice cracked slightly. Did you really manipulate Grandpa? Do you believe I did? I don't know. Madison says you spent all that hospital time turning Grandpa against her. And Marcus, I sat with my father because I loved him. Not to scheme. Because he was my dad and I didn't want him to be alone. Then why is Madison lying? I led him to my study, closed the door. What I tell you stays here until Friday, understood? He nodded. Grandpa's will was written before his health crisis, when he was completely lucid. 3 independent doctors certified his mental capacity. It's legal and ironclad. But Madison said, Madison doesn't know the full story yet. The will reading will explain everything. You can't tell me now. No. Because Grandpa arranged this a specific way for specific reasons. But I can tell you this, I didn't manipulate him. Everything happening Friday is exactly what my father wanted. Well, that's not an answer. It's the only one I can give. So decide, do you trust me? Have I ever lied to you? Marcus went silent, thinking hard. He started pacing. Madison says she deserves the inheritance because she understood Grandpa's vision. What do you remember, Marcus? Not what she's saying now. What do you remember from being there? His expression shifted. I remember Grandpa's hospital room. You were there every day. Madison came maybe 3 times. Twice. She missed when he died by 3 hours. And the funeral speech about how close they were. But I remember thinking that was strange. I rarely saw them together in recent years. What else? T. Pharmatech, when she got in trouble for taking credit for someone else's work. She wanted you to fix it. You told her to take responsibility. And she got angry, said you never supported her. But Dad, she really had taken someone else's work. Yes. Yeah, and high school, volleyball. She blamed the coach, said everyone was against her. He paused. But Mom told me Madison had skipped half the practices. It wasn't unfair. Madison just didn't want to put in the work. Silence stretched between us. She always does this, Marcus said quietly. Makes herself the victim when things don't go her way. I'm not saying she's a bad person. She's your sister, my daughter. I love her. But she has a pattern of avoiding responsibility. Is that what this is about, the inheritance? This is about character. Friday, everyone will see what Grandpa saw. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Madison. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Need you on my side. You're my brother. Another from Amanda. Marcus, your sister needs family support. Don't let your father manipulate you like he did with Declan. He showed me both messages. You don't need to choose me. Choose the facts. Choose what's right. Marcus took a breath. I'll be at the will reading, and I'm sitting next to you. Marcus, I trust you, Dad. You've never lied to me. You've never asked me to do anything unethical. Madison, I love her, but I don't believe her story anymore. He texted Madison. I'll be at the reading. Need to hear the full story before choosing sides. Her reply came instantly. Seriously, you choose him over your own sister. Marcus silenced his phone. Whatever happens Friday, I'm with you. I pulled him into a hug, throat tight. That means more than you know. Wednesday evening, Jennifer showed me her phone. Silas, look at this. Screenshot of something Madison had posted, then quickly deleted. Someone had captured it first. Text conversation with DH. Saw your posts. You're handling this brilliantly. Stay strong. When the dust settles, let's discuss your future. MedCorps could use someone with your strategic thinking. Madison's response. Thank you. It means so much to have someone who sees my value. Derek Hamilton. He's recruiting her during a family crisis. Or ensuring her loyalty, Jennifer said. Yeah, she has no idea she's being used. Should we warn her? She wouldn't believe us. She has to learn this lesson the hard way. Thursday afternoon, Amanda called. Silas, I know what you're doing. Turning Marcus against Madison. Marcus is an adult. He makes his own choices. Madison deserves that inheritance. She's smart, charismatic. Madison's 28 and has never held a job longer than 18 months. What qualifies her to run a $200 million company? She has vision unlike you just plodding along. That's how you see 30 years of building this company plodding. You're riding Dad's coattails. I won't debate this with you. See you tomorrow. I hung up. On Thursday evening, 24 hours before the reading, I sat in my study rereading Dad's letter from the audit meeting. Marcus knocked. Dad, you okay? Just thinking about Grandpa. Wishing he was here to see this through. He is here in a way, through what he planned. You know what I fear, not what happens to the money, not to the company, what happens to Madison when she learns the full story. Maybe something needs to break before she can rebuild into someone better. I looked at my son with new appreciation. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. Come on. Mom's making you eat something before tomorrow. Friday, 1 p.m., 1 hour before the reading. Jennifer, Marcus, and I sat in the car outside the family home. Madison arrived with Amanda expensive clothes looking ready for war. Here we go, Jennifer said. Here we go. We stepped out, walked toward the entrance. Madison saw us, deliberately looked away, linking arms with Amanda. Dad. I hope you knew what you were doing, I thought. Because in 1 hour, everything changes. The will reading happened exactly as I've already told you. But what I haven't mentioned yet is what came after when the real war began. The FBI came on a Tuesday morning in mid-December, 6 weeks after that explosive will reading changed everything. I watched from my study window as 2 agents in dark suits stepped out of an unmarked sedan, their badges catching the winter light. Benjamin had warned me they were coming. What he hadn't prepared me for was how real it would feel, how the corporate espionage case that had lived in documents and lawyer meetings would suddenly become federal. They wanted to interview Madison first. Protocol, they said. Subject of the investigation gets first crack at telling her side. I offered them Dad's old conference room, then retreated to my office where I could hear nothing but my own thoughts and the tick of the pocket watch I now kept on my desk. Time reveals all truths. Dad had been right about that. The interview lasted 3 hours. When the agents finally emerged, the lead investigator, a woman named Collins with sharp eyes and 20 years of white-collar crime experience, stopped by my office. Mr. Ravenscroft, this is now a federal investigation into corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty. We'll need full access to your internal audit, all communications and financial records. Timeline is 6 to 8 weeks for evidence gathering, then we decide on charges. I nodded. Whatever you need. Your daughter claims this is retaliation. Family dispute over inheritance. Agent Collins's tone was neutral, professional. Is it? No. I met her eyes. The audit began 3 months before my father died. He suspected something. We found it. The will reading just complicated the timing. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. We'll be in touch. That afternoon, I sat with Benjamin and Stephen Caldwell in Benjamin's office, surrounded by evidence that would have made Dad proud and broken his heart. Stephen had organized everything with the precision of a surgeon preparing for a complex operation. 47 emails between Madison and Derek Hamilton. Stephen said, sliding a bound report across the mahogany table. Dating back 14 months. They start professional friendly. By month 6, they're discussing information exchange and mutual benefit. Benjamin opened a second folder. 12 proprietary documents accessed without authorization. Project Horizon, our pharmaceutical distribution, AI, the heart transplant logistics algorithm. 3 R&D proposals worth 8 figures in development costs. Medcore Solutions launched competing products in July. Stephen continued. Their AI platform suspiciously similar to Horizon. Their logistics system mirror image of ours. Financial analysis suggests they gained approximately $8 million in market advantage from stolen intellectual property. I felt sick. 8 million. Not the 12 we'd initially estimated, but still a catastrophic betrayal. And the meetings, 8 in-person encounters we can document, Benjamin said quietly. 4 at restaurants, 2 at medical conferences, 2 at her apartment, all recorded on building security or conference registration. The pattern is clear. She fed him information, he leveraged it. So the FBI asked if this was retaliation, I said. Family revenge for the will. Stephen shook his head. The timeline destroys that narrative. This started in September of last year. Your father changed his will because of the investigation, not the other way around. He gave her one last test. Could she confess, take responsibility, choose integrity over entitlement? She chose to burn a symbolic check and hire lawyers instead. We sat in silence. Outside, winter rain began to fall, the same cold December rain that had fallen at Dad's funeral. By evening, my phone rang. Madison. I almost didn't answer, but Benjamin had advised me to document everything. I hit record. You bastard. Her voice was raw with fury. The FBI, you sicked the FBI on me. I handed them evidence of corporate espionage. I said calmly. What they do with it is their decision. Either this is about the will. You can't stand that Dad wanted me to run the company, that he chose me, so you fabricated this whole 47 emails, Madison, 12 documents, $8 million in damages. None of that is fabricated. I'll destroy you. Her voice dropped to something cold and calculated. I'll go to the press. Tell them how you manipulated a dying old man, how you turned the company against his own granddaughter, how this family dynasty is built on lies and cruelty. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Do what you need to do, I said quietly. But the evidence doesn't care about PR narratives. Neither does the FBI. She hung up. I sat there listening to the dial tone, feeling older than my 52 years. Late that night, Jennifer found me in the study, still holding the phone. She'd been crying. I could see it in her red-rimmed eyes, the way she clutched a tissue. She'd loved Madison too, had watched her grow up, had hoped. So tell me everything, she said, sitting across from Dad's old desk. No lawyer speak, no protection. I need to know what our daughter did. So I told her. The emails, the meetings, the stolen documents, the $8 million in damages, Derek's manipulation, and Madison's willing participation, the FBI investigation, and the likely criminal charges. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her face crumbling piece by piece. When I finished, she picked up the pocket watch from my desk, running her fingers over the engraving. Time reveals all truths, she read aloud. He knew. Declan knew what she was capable of, and he gave her every chance to choose differently. He did. I took her hand. So did I. On Monday after the audit, I asked her to confess. She threatened to sue me instead. And I raised her, Jennifer whispered. Where did we go wrong? You gave her love, I said. But somewhere along the way, she learned she could escape consequences. That's not your failure, it's hers. We sat together in the quiet of my father's study, surrounded by evidence of betrayal, holding on to what was left of truth. 3 days later, Derek Hamilton was arrested at MedCorps headquarters. Federal agents walked him out in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. The dominoes were falling. Madison would be next. I never imagined I'd watch my daughter led away in handcuffs. But on December 22nd, 2023, that's exactly what happened. Benjamin called at 6:30 that morning. They're moving on Madison today. Thought you should know. I shouldn't have gone. Benjamin advised against it. Jennifer begged me not to, but some part of me, the father who'd taught her to cast a line, who'd held her through nightmares, needed to be there, even if only from a distance. I parked 3 blocks from her apartment building, engine idling in the December cold. The FBI arrived at 7:15 in 2 black SUVs, professional, efficient. No drama until they emerged 12 minutes later, with Madison between them, wrists zip-tied behind her back. She wore yoga pants and an oversized sweater. No makeup. Hair unbrushed. The shock on her face was genuine. Apparently, Amanda's lawyers hadn't warned her this was coming. A handful of reporters were already there, cameras rolling. Amanda had tipped them off, I'd learn later. Nothing like public humiliation to fuel a victim narrative. I watched from behind tinted windows as my daughter was guided into the SUV. For a moment, she looked exactly like the 8-year-old who'd cried when her goldfish died, who'd begged me to fix everything. I told her then that some things couldn't be fixed, only mourned. This was my choice, I reminded myself. Hers too. But God, it hurt. That afternoon, I sat in the back row of the federal courthouse while Madison faced a judge for the first time. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, lawyers, curiosity seekers, drawn to the spectacle of a medical dynasty imploding. The charges were read: wire fraud, corporate espionage, criminal conspiracy. Each count carried up to 20 years. Madison stood beside her attorney, a slick corporate defender Amanda had hired, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. The prosecutor argued flight risk. Ms. Ravenscroft has access to significant financial resources through family connections. She faces substantial prison time. We request remand without bail. Her attorney countered with character witnesses and community ties. Ms. Ravenscroft is a respected professional with no prior record. She's not a danger to the community. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, wasn't impressed by either argument. Bail is set at $500,000. Defendant will surrender passport and have no contact with any Ravenscroft Industries employees. Trial is scheduled for March 2024. The gavel fell. Madison turned, searching the courtroom. When her eyes found me in the back row, the look she gave me was pure hatred. Amanda posted bail within the hour. By evening, the media circus was in full swing. I watched from my study as cable news dissected our family drama with the enthusiasm of vultures at a carcass. Healthcare heiress arrested for corporate espionage. Family dynasty torn apart by greed and betrayal. Amanda gave an interview on the courthouse steps, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. My brother is vindictive and jealous. Madison is innocent. This is what happens when powerful men can't handle strong women. The trending hashtag used Madison's middle name. I won't repeat it here. Our company stock dropped 3% on the news. My phone buzzed with calls from board members concerned about reputation damage, from employees worried about their futures, from old colleagues offering sympathy that felt more like judgment. Late that night, Jennifer, Marcus, and I gathered in Dad's old study. Jennifer had been crying on and off all day. Marcus looked exhausted, his usually calm demeanor strained. "Guilty. Amanda's making everything worse," Jennifer said. "She's funding Madison's defense, giving interviews, turning this into a media war. She told me she'd take you down if you don't drop the charges," Marcus added quietly. "I told her you can't drop federal charges even if you wanted to." "The company's taking hits," I said. "Stock price, employee morale, client confidence. We need to get ahead of this." "How?" Jennifer asked. "Amanda's out there calling you a tyrant. Madison's playing the victim. The media loves a villain." "The truth," I said, pulling out Dad's pocket watch. "Time reveals all truths." We issue a statement. Brief, factual, compassionate, but firm. "We don't engage with the drama," Marcus nodded. "What about Madison? Is there anything we can do?" I looked at my son, seeing the same conflict I felt mirrored in his eyes. "We can hope she finds her way back to integrity, but we can't protect her from consequences anymore." The next morning, I held a brief press conference at Ravenscroft Industries headquarters. I'd spent the night crafting the statement with Benjamin, Jennifer, and our PR team. Ravenscroft Industries has built its reputation on ethical business practices and corporate integrity. When we discovered evidence of wrongdoing, we cooperated fully with federal investigators. These charges reflect individual choices, not company culture. As a family, we are heartbroken. As a company, we are committed to accountability and justice. I refuse to answer personal questions. Refuse to discuss Madison by name. The pocket watch was visible in my hand throughout. Several reporters noted it in their coverage. Let them wonder what it meant. As I walked back inside, Benjamin touched my arm. You did the right thing. Then why does it feel like I'm losing everything? He didn't have an answer. That evening, I received an encrypted email. The subject line read, "You haven't seen the worst yet." It was sent from Derek Hamilton's personal account. While my daughter awaited trial, I had 3,000 employees counting on me to save the company she'd tried to destroy. January 9th, 2024. The boardroom felt like a courtroom as Stephen Caldwell called the emergency session to order. 8% stock decline since the charges went public. 2 major clients threatening to walk. Half the board wanted my head on a platter. The optics are terrible, one board member said bluntly. Your daughter's facing federal charges for corporate espionage. Clients are nervous. Investors are spooked. Maybe it's time to step aside. Let someone without the family baggage take over. I looked around the table. Some faces sympathetic, others calculating. Stephen's expression was unreadable. Running away confirms guilt, I said quietly. We fix this by doubling down on integrity, not abandoning ship. I laid out the 90-day recovery plan I'd spent 3 sleepless weeks developing. Independent ethics review by an outside firm. Personal transparency visits. I'd meet with our top 20 clients face-to-face. Employee town halls to rebuild internal trust. New governance protocols. A community investment program in Dad's name. You're asking us to bet the company on your word, Stephen said. No. I'm asking you to bet on the system my father built. One bad actor doesn't define 3,000 good people. The vote was 7-3. I had 90 days. That afternoon, Marcus and I drove to Pharmatech headquarters. Our largest client, $12 million annually, was on the verge of terminating. Their CEO had demanded a meeting before making the final call. I hadn't planned to bring Marcus. He'd asked to come, said he wanted to help. I'd nearly said no. What did a 24-year-old with a medical degree know about corporate crisis management? But something in his eyes reminded me of Dad's quiet confidence. The Pharmatech CEO didn't waste time. How do we trust you after your daughter stole from us? You don't trust me, I said. You trust our systems. Here's what we've changed since the breach was discovered. I walked through the new protocols, access controls, audit procedures, third-party oversight. Then Marcus spoke. I'm Silas's son. Madison's my half-sister. Growing up, I watched her get everything she wanted without earning it. I watched my father work for respect she thought she deserved by birthright. He paused. What happened wasn't a system failure. It was a character failure. And character can't be inherited. It has to be chosen. Every employee at Ravenscroft chooses integrity every day. One person chose differently. That's on her, not them. The CEO studied Marcus for a long moment. That took guts, kid. The contract was renewed with additional oversight provisions. As we walked to the car, I squeezed my son's shoulder. Your grandfather would have been proud of that. I learned from watching you, Marcus said simply. 2 weeks into the plan, I stood before 300 employees in our main auditorium, another 1,000 joining by video. The energy was tense. People were scared, angry, uncertain about their futures. My daughter made terrible choices, I began. I won't run from that. But this company, you are bigger than one individual's failure. I announced increased profit sharing for non-executive staff. Introduced the Declan Ravenscroft Ethics Award for employees demonstrating integrity. Then opened the floor for questions. They didn't hold back. How do we know this won't happen again? Why should we suffer for family drama? What if more clients leave? I answered every question directly. No corporate spin, no lawyer-vetted responses, just honesty. Then Harold Carson stood up. Our COO, 63 years with the company. 30 years ago, I made a mistake that nearly cost us a major contract. Declan Ravenscroft could have fired me. Instead, he sat me down and said, The measure of a man isn't avoiding mistakes. It's what he does after. He gave me a second chance. I've spent 3 decades earning that trust. Harold looked around the room. Silas is doing what his father taught him. We owe him the same chance Declan gave me. The standing ovation lasted 2 full minutes. I had to step away to compose myself. Late that night, I sat alone in Dad's old office reading through his journals from the 90s. Jennifer had found them in storage leather-bound books, filled with his tight, precise handwriting. One entry from 1995 stopped me cold. The measure of a leader isn't avoiding crisis. It's how you rebuild afterward. Another from 1998. Family and business will sometimes conflict. Choose integrity. Always. He'd known. Somehow he'd prepared for the possibility that this exact scenario might unfold. The will as a test. The pocket watch reminder. The journals as a roadmap. I picked up the watch from where it sat on his desk, catching moonlight through the window. Time reveals all truths, and truth, it turned out, was the only currency that mattered. By week 6, the turnaround was undeniable. Our second largest client not only stayed, but increased their contract value. Employee retention actually rose 2% after the town halls. Industry press noted our rare transparency in crisis response. Stock price recovered to pre-scandal levels. Stephen Caldwell stopped by my office privately. I doubted you. Your father would be proud. He planned for this. I admitted. All of it. The test, the consequences, the recovery. He knew character eventually wins. Stephen smiled. Declan always did play the long game, just as we'd stabilized the next crisis hit. Amanda filed a lawsuit claiming I'd manipulated Dad's will through undue influence. And Madison's trial was 3 weeks away. The dominoes were still falling. Madison's trial lasted 3 days. The jury took 47 minutes to convict her on every charge. March 14, 2024. Jennifer gripped my hand as the jury foreman rose to deliver the verdict. Guilty on wire fraud. Guilty on corporate espionage. Guilty on criminal conspiracy. Madison stood beside her attorney, face blank, as her world collapsed in a federal courtroom. Outside, media swarmed. Inside, I felt no victory. Just a father watching his daughter pay for choices she'd made long before the FBI came knocking. Sentencing was set for 2 weeks later. The sentencing hearing was worse than the trial. The prosecution recommended 18 to 24 months. Her defense attorney pleaded for probation and community service. Then came victim impact statements. Harold spoke about the 3 employees who'd quit out of fear that the company culture was corrupt. A pharmatech representative explained how trust erosion had cost them months of productivity and forced expensive security audits. Judge Patricia Morrison listened to everything, then looked directly at Madison. This wasn't youthful recklessness. This was calculated betrayal of trust for financial gain. You had every advantage: education, family support, professional opportunities, and you chose to steal. The sentence: 12 months at FCY Morgantown, a minimum security facility. 2 years supervised release following incarceration. Restitution of $12.4 million. 500 hours community service post-release. Madison finally broke. Tears streamed down her face as the judge continued. Ms. Ravenscroft, I'm seeing remorse now for the first time in these proceedings. I hope it's genuine. Judge Morrison's tone softened slightly. You're 28 years old. You have time to rebuild a life based on integrity. I suggest you use your incarceration to figure out who you want to be. For one brief moment, Madison looked at me. Real eye contact for the first time in months. I saw the 8-year-old who'd once asked me if I was proud of her. I'd said yes then. I couldn't say it now. The drive home was silent. Jennifer stared out the window at the gray March sky. Finally, she spoke. 12 months. It feels like too much and not enough at the same time. Dad's letter said to show mercy if she demonstrates real change, I said quietly. We'll wait and see. We agreed not to visit during the first 90 days. Facility policy recommended it anyway. Time for inmates to adjust. Madison needed space to reflect without family interference. That evening, Marcus called. Amanda phoned, screaming about family betrayal. I blocked her number. Good, I said. After the verdict, Amanda had disappeared. No courtroom support for Madison during sentencing. No media interviews defending her niece. Just silence. I wondered what that meant. By May, I had indirect updates. Marcus had been approved as a family contact through the facility counselor, Dr. Sarah Williams. She reported that Madison's first month was difficult defensive with other inmates resistant to programming. The breakthrough came when she was assigned to teach financial literacy classes to other prisoners. Hearing their stories, women who'd made desperate choices out of poverty, addiction, lack of opportunity, forced Madison to confront her own privilege and the magnitude of her betrayal. Dr. Williams noted that Madison had begun journaling as part of her therapy work. She's starting to take genuine accountability. It's early, but I'm cautiously optimistic. 8 weeks into her sentence, I received a handwritten letter. Madison's familiar script on prison stationery. I read it aloud to Jennifer that evening in Dad's study. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. For the first time, I'm seeing what grandfather tried to teach me. Real wealth is character, not account balances. I destroyed trust, hurt people who never harmed me, and betrayed the family name. I did this. No one else. Derek and Amanda didn't force me. They showed me a path. I chose to walk it. I chose to access files I had no right to see. I chose to meet Derek knowing what he wanted. I chose money and status over integrity. There's a woman here who embezzled because her daughter needed cancer treatment and insurance wouldn't cover it. Another who stole food to feed her kids. They made terrible choices from desperation. I made terrible choices from greed and entitlement. I don't know if I can fix what I've broken, but I want to try. Not for a lighter sentence or public redemption. For me. To become someone grandfather might have been proud of. I understand if you never want to speak to me again. I've earned that. Madison, Jennifer cried, reading it. I sat in Dad's chair holding the letter, feeling the weight of genuine remorse for the first time. It's a start, I said finally. Words are easy. We'll see if actions follow. I wrote back briefly, keep doing the work. Time will answer. Late that night, I reread Dad's letter, the private one Benjamin had given me after the will reading. Show mercy if there's genuine confession. I remembered something else Dad had said years ago during one of our fishing trips, after Madison had been caught cheating on a college exam. People can change, Silas, but only when they truly want to, and only when there are real consequences first. The sentence was the consequence. The letter suggested genuine reflection was beginning. The pocket watch sat on the desk, catching lamplight. Time reveals all truths. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a cautious ember of hope. I wanted to believe Madison's change was real. But I'd learned a bitter lesson over these months. Actions, not words, reveal character, and Madison had 10 more months to prove hers. Before I reveal what happened to Derek and Amanda, the two people who manipulated Madison into this mess, I need to know you're still with me. On a scale of 1 to 10, how curious are you about their consequences? Drop your number in the comments below. Quick note: the next part of this story contains fictionalized elements that may not reflect actual events. If you'd prefer to stop here, feel free to step away now. While Madison was learning accountability behind bars, the two people who'd manipulated her were about to face consequences of their own. July 18, 2024. I attended Derek Hamilton's trial not for satisfaction, but to understand how he'd exploited my daughter. The evidence was overwhelming: email trails showing calculated targeting, financial records proving Medcor's gains from stolen data, Witness testimony about Derek's pattern of manipulating younger professionals for corporate advantage. The prosecution painted a portrait of a serial manipulator who'd specifically identified Madison as vulnerable, entitled eager for validation, desperate to prove herself outside her family's shadow. Derek's defense argued Madison had been a willing participant, which was true. But willingness doesn't erase manipulation. The jury deliberated 6 hours, guilty on all counts. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, Derek shrugged. I was just doing business. No remorse. No acknowledgement of the lives destroyed. Just cold calculation. Sentence 4 years federal prison, $15 million in restitution. Medcor's board fired him immediately. The company's stock collapsed. Within weeks, Medcor's entire operation unraveled. Major contracts terminated. An internal investigation revealed Derek's manipulative tactics had been used on multiple employees across several companies. By mid-August, Medcor filed for bankruptcy protection. Over 400 people lost jobs because one man had built a business model on theft and manipulation. I read the industry coverage with grim recognition. Manipulation's damage extended far beyond direct victims. Derek had destroyed careers, companies, families, all while calling it business. Marcus brought me evidence I'd hoped I wouldn't find. Amanda had known about Derek's manipulation of Madison. More than known, she'd facilitated it. Emails showed Amanda had strategically introduced Derek to Madison at a medical conference 18 months earlier. Text messages revealed Amanda encouraging Madison's meetings with Derek, framing it as networking and building her own success. Bank records showed Amanda had received $200,000 in consulting fees from Medcor during the period Madison was leaking information. Benjamin laid it out clinically. We can prosecute conspiracy charges. The evidence is solid. She's family, I said quietly. But I need to hear the truth directly from her. Jennifer and I drove to Amanda and Andrew's home on a Saturday afternoon. The tension was immediate. Amanda knew why we were there. I presented the evidence calmly. Bank statements, emails, text messages. I was helping Madison assert herself. Amanda's voice rose defensively. You always controlled everything, Silas. She needed someone who believed in her potential. You were helping yourself to $200,000, I said evenly. Amanda's face crumbled. Dad always favored you. Everything was always about Silas and his perfect integrity, Silas and his patient competence. I worked just as hard, but I was never enough because I wasn't you. Decades of resentment poured out. Feeling invisible. Jealous of the fishing trips, the private conversations, the way Dad had structured the will to test Madison, but never doubted Silas. She'd convinced herself that helping Madison succeed outside family approval was somehow striking back at a lifetime of being second choice. Andrew spoke for the first time, his voice quiet. I told you this would backfire, Amanda. She turned on me. Are you going to have me arrested too? I want 3 things, I said. Full written confession, return the money, public apology to Madison for manipulating her. Do those things and I won't prosecute. 2 days later, Amanda's attorney delivered a cashier's check for $200,000. A written confession acknowledging her role. A brief public statement. I made serious errors in judgment that harmed my family. I take full responsibility. She was forbidden from contacting Madison. Her reputation in social circles disintegrated, word spread quickly about her role in the scandal. Andrew filed for legal separation 6 weeks later. Amanda was effectively exiled from the family. No more Sunday dinners. No more company events. Dorothy refused to speak to her. Marcus blocked her calls. Prison would have been kinder in some ways. At least it ends. Late that night, Jennifer found me in Dad's study. You were harsher with Madison than with Amanda, she observed. Madison was 28 and could grow. Amanda's 50 and knew exactly what she was doing. I pulled out one of Dad's journals. Listen to this. Sometimes mercy means letting people face natural consequences, not legal ones. What did Amanda lose? Jennifer asked. Her marriage, her reputation, family connection, everything she valued. I picked up the pocket watch. Prison takes time. This took her identity. Justice has different forms. Jennifer nodded slowly. And Madison? Madison's learning who she is without entitlement. Amanda just learned she can't buy significance with other people's destruction. I wrote to Madison explaining Amanda's role. Not to excuse Madison's choices, but to give context. You were manipulated, but you still made choices. Both things can be true. Derek's in prison. Amanda faces different consequences. Focus on your own growth. Madison's reply came a week later, brief but clear. Thank you for telling me the truth. I'm angry at them, but I still own my part. What I did was my decision. Reading that, I felt something close to pride for the first time in a year. With Derek imprisoned and Amanda exiled, I thought the storm had passed. But Madison's release was approaching, and I didn't know if the woman coming home would be the daughter I'd raised or the stranger who'd betrayed us. Time would tell. It always did. March 2025. While Madison counted down her final days inside Ravenscroft Industries, was posting record numbers, and I was preparing for the hardest decision of my life. March 5th. The annual board meeting felt different for the first time in 2 years. The shadow of scandal didn't hang over us. Harold presented results that would have made Dad proud. Revenue up 23% year over year. Employee retention at 94% compared to an industry average of 78%. 3 major new clients signed. Ethics complaints down to near zero. Rachel Green, our new ethics director hired after the crisis, stood to share employee feedback. We surveyed staff about company culture. 91% said they trust leadership more now than before the scandal. One employee wrote, "We learned integrity isn't about never facing crisis, it's about how you handle it." The Declan Ravenscroft Memorial Scholarship launched that day. $10 million endowed funding 50 students annually who demonstrated both academic excellence and ethical leadership. 12 employees received the Declan Ethics Award for integrity under pressure, including a junior analyst who'd reported a potential compliance issue before it became a problem. Industry press called us a case study in post-crisis leadership. Sitting in Dad's chair, I thought he'd be proud, not because we survived, but because of how we did it. Later that week, Marcus stopped by my office with news. He was launching a nonprofit healthcare initiative, the Ravenscroft Community Health Initiative, funded by $5 million from his inheritance. "Grandfather taught me business is about people," Marcus said. "I want to help people directly. Healthcare access for underserved communities in Riverside, mobile clinics, preventive care, health education." "Your grandfather's smiling somewhere," I said. Marcus leaned forward. "Dad, I watched Madison chase validation through power and money. She thought success meant being chosen, being special. I learned success means choosing to serve." He paused. "Grandfather gave me resources. Madison taught me by negative example what not to do with them." "That's wisdom," I said quietly. I learned from watching both of you," Marcus said. "You chose the hard right over the easy wrong. Madison chose comfort over character. I want to choose purpose." Watching my son chart his own ethical path, I felt something close to peace. The facility counselor's comprehensive report arrived via secure email. Dr. Sarah Williams had documented Madison's 10-month trajectory with clinical precision, completed all rehabilitation programs, earned GED teaching certification, led financial literacy workshops for over 40 inmates. Therapy notes showed genuine insight. Acknowledges entitlement patterns, actively practicing empathy. One note read, "Patient demonstrated breakthrough, when helping inmate understand consequences of check fraud, showed genuine compassion, recognized parallel to own choices without deflection, zero disciplinary issues. Solid reintegration, planned 30 days halfway house, then supervised probation. Dr. Williams's assessment concluded, change appears genuine. Actions consistent with words throughout 10-month period. Patient has moved from external blame to internal accountability. I read the report twice, allowing cautious hope to take root. In a private board session, Stephen Caldwell raised the inevitable question, should Madison ever be allowed back at the company? Opinions divided. Harold noted that employees who remembered her betrayal needed to see accountability. One board member voiced concern. What message does it send if we welcome back someone who stole from us? Another countered. What message does it send if we believe people can't change? Rachel argued that conditional re-entry could demonstrate redemption was possible, but only with strict safeguards. Stephen worried about optics and trust erosion among clients. I presented Dad's letter. He said mercy depends on genuine change. She's shown it for 10 months. But mercy doesn't mean exemption from consequences. The board voted no immediate return. 2-year evaluation period. Entry-level position only if approved. Zero tolerance policy for any violations. Privately, I felt relieved. The conditions preserved both mercy and accountability. That evening, I drafted terms with Benjamin and Rachel. Start from zero. Entry-level position, junior healthcare compliance analyst. Standard market salary $40,000. Minimum 2 years per level before promotion consideration. Quarterly performance reviews like all staff. Public accountability. Public apology to all employees at company meeting. Acknowledge harm caused. 10% salary contribution to Employee Assistance Fund for 2 years. Zero tolerance. Any policy violation equals immediate termination. Any dishonesty equals permanent ban. Quarterly audits first 3 years. No leveraging family name for advantage. The terms were harsh. They needed to be. Jennifer found me in Dad's study late that night staring at Madison's childhood photos on the shelf. The little girl who'd asked me to teach her to fish. The teenager who'd cried when she didn't make varsity volleyball. The young woman who'd hugged me at her college graduation. Those conditions are brutal, Jennifer said softly. They have to be. She hurt a lot of people. What if she says no? Then she doesn't want redemption badly enough. I pulled out Dad's letter. He gave her a test through the will. This is my test. What she does with the opportunity is up to her. Jennifer picked up a photo of 8-year-old Madison holding a fish she'd caught. I miss that little girl. Me too, I admitted. But maybe if we're lucky, the woman coming home will be someone even better. Someone who's earned her character instead of inheriting expectations. Jennifer read the letter again, tracing her fingers over Dad's handwriting. The real test wasn't the will, it was everything that came after. I'm giving her the chance he gave me, I said. What she does with it determines who she becomes. 5 days before her release, I called the facility. 10-minute call limit. Madison's voice sounded different, quieter, steadier. I heard about the company's success, she said. I'm proud of you, Dad. I've prepared conditions if you want to reintegrate eventually. They're strict. I don't deserve mercy. Whatever you think is fair. I'll explain when you're out. Focus on your transition first. A pause. Then, Dad, thank you for not giving up on me. The call ended. I sat holding the pocket watch, feeling the weight of what came next. March 26, 2025. I stood outside FCI Morgantown as morning sun cut through early spring cold, holding an envelope containing 3 pages that could define my daughter's future, not knowing if she'd accept the terms, or if the woman walking out those doors would be someone I recognized at all. Time would tell. It always did. The woman who walked out of FCY Morgantown on March 26, 2025, looked like my daughter, but I was about to find out if she'd become someone I could trust again. Cold morning air bit through my jacket as I waited in the parking lot, envelope in hand pocket, watch in my pocket. The doors opened. Madison emerged, simple jeans and a gray sweater, carrying one small duffel bag, no makeup, hair pulled back. She looked smaller than I remembered. Quieter. Our eyes met, hers filled with tears. "Dad, thank you for coming." "Let's go home," I said. We drove to the halfway house 30-day residency required by her probation terms. Mostly silence. Madison stared out the window at a world she hadn't seen without bars for 12 months. "I read about the company's success," she said quietly, "and Marcus's nonprofit. Everyone moved forward without me. You made that necessary," I said. "But it doesn't mean the doors permanently closed." The halfway house had a small meeting room. Silas Madison and her probation officer, Ashley Miller, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, who'd seen every manipulation tactic invented. I handed Madison the envelope. "These are the conditions if you want to rejoin Ravenscroft eventually," she read in silence. I watched her eyes move down the pages. Tears blurred them. The silence stretched long enough to feel uncomfortable. "Finally, these are more than fair. More than I deserve." "Yeah, can you commit to them?" I asked. "Yes, all of them." She looked up. "When can I start?" 90 days from now, after you've stabilized. There's a public apology requirement first." Madison nodded. "I understand. I owe that to everyone I hurt." Ashley spoke for the first time. "This structure actually supports the recovery process. I approve." Week 4, mid-April. First family dinner at the Ravenscroft home, supervised probation allowed it. Jennifer cried when she opened the door, pulled Madison into a hug that lasted a full minute. She'd cooked Madison's childhood favorite pot roast with roasted vegetables. Marcus was there. I'd worried about their dynamic, but my son surprised me with warmth. Conversation was careful at first, avoiding depth. Testing waters. "Marcus, I heard about your nonprofit," Madison said. "It's incredible." "Grandfather taught us both about legacy," Marcus said gently. "I'm glad you get a chance to build yours differently now." Madison turned to me. "Dad, can I see Grandfather's pocket watch?" I handed it over. She held it carefully, reading the engraving aloud. "Time reveals all truths. I finally understand what he meant." She handed it back. "This belongs to you. You earned it." June 15th. Company-wide meeting, over 300 employees in person, hundreds more remote. I sat in the back row with Jennifer. Marcus sat beside us. Rachel Green introduced Madison. "Ms. Ravenscroft has requested the opportunity to address the company." Madison walked to the podium. Her hands shook visibly. "I betrayed everyone in this room. I stole from this company. I threatened your jobs and livelihoods." Her voice was steady despite the trembling. "I was arrogant, selfish, and entitled. I believed I deserved things I hadn't earned. No one forced me to do this. Not Derek Hamilton. Not my aunt. I made these choices. So I spent a year learning what real accountability means. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to prove I've changed. If you give me that chance, I'll earn back your trust one day at a time, starting from zero." Silence after she finished. Then Harold Carson stood up, starting a slow clap. Others joined, not everyone. Some employees remained seated, arms crossed. Madison cried, nodded gratefully, and left quickly. In the parking lot, Jennifer hugged her. "That took courage." Madison shook her head. "It took 12 months in prison to find courage. I should have found it sooner." June 30th. Madison's first day. She reported to Sharon Mills in HR wearing business casual that looked purchased from a discount store, no designer labels, no jewelry except a simple watch. A small cubicle in the compliance department. standard desk computer phone. Her nameplate read, Madison Ravenscroft, Junior Analyst. No middle name, no fancy title. Orientation with 3 other new hires. Madison was treated exactly like everyone else. Paperwork, benefits, explanation, building tour, IT setup. Lunch in the cafeteria. Madison initially sat alone. Then a young employee, Tyler, maybe 24, sat down across from her. My mom said you made mistakes but owned them, he said. That's more than most powerful people do. Thank you for giving me a chance, Madison said quietly. Her first assignment, reviewing basic compliance documents for a small client contract. Entry-level work she could have done in her sleep 5 years ago. She approached it with the focus of someone who knew she had everything to prove. That evening, she texted me, pre-approved by her probation officer. First day done. Starting from here feels right. The 90-day review happened at a neutral coffee shop. I'd received reports from Ashley Miller, perfect compliance with all probation terms. Work reports from Rachel and Sharon, punctual, diligent, humble, 0 issues. How does it feel? I asked. Humbling, Madison said. Good. I see the company differently from this level. I see the people I hurt. She paused. Dad, I don't know if I'll ever reach leadership again. But I'm okay with that. That acceptance is what your grandfather tried to teach you all along, I said. I wish I'd learned it before I destroyed so much. Her voice cracked. You can't change the past, but you're changing the future. Late that night at home, Jennifer found me reading Madison's performance summary. Do you believe it's real? She asked. I want to, I said. But I'm watching actions, not just words. I pulled out Dad's letter, read the final line again. Show mercy if there's genuine confession. Time reveals all truths, I said. We'll know over time. The pocket watch on the desk caught evening light. Outside, summer fireflies blinked in the gathering dark. For the first time in 2 years, I felt something close to peace. By October 2025, Madison had worked 4 months, and the board was meeting to decide if she could stay permanently. October 12th, 2025. 2.5 years after Madison burned a $52 million check, or thought she had, the board was deciding if she deserved a second chance. The same boardroom where her crimes had been exposed now hosted testimonies about her transformation. Morning light cut through tall windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany table where 12 board members sat with folders thick with documentation. Rachel Green stood at the presentation screen, her 4-month evaluation report projected behind her. She'd been meticulous. I'd watched her build this case with the same rigor she'd brought to every ethics audit since we'd hired her. Satuiti, performance metrics exceeds expectations across all categories. Rachel began. Madison completes assignments 20% faster than department average, while maintaining 98% accuracy, higher than her peers. She clicked to the next slide. Ethics audits, 0 concerns. Complete transparency. She voluntarily disclosed a potential conflict of interest last month that turned out to be nothing but the fact that she raised it proactively speaks volumes. Rachel's voice warmed slightly. Peer feedback has evolved. Colleagues initially skeptical now report consistently positive interactions. But I want to highlight something. She started on her own initiative, a weekly ethics discussion group. 15 employees participate regularly. They discuss real workplace dilemmas, gray areas, how to navigate competing pressures. Board member David Parker leaned forward. She's leading this. Isn't that bold, given her history? That's exactly why it works, Rachel said. She doesn't lecture. She shares what she learned from failing. Last week's topic was recognizing rationalization, how we convince ourselves small compromises are acceptable. Madison talked about how she justified each step toward corporate espionage. The group found it powerful. Harold Carson stood next, 63 years of company history behind every word. His hands rested on the table edge, weathered from decades of work. that had started in the warehouse before he'd earned his way to COO. I didn't want to give her a chance, he said, voice rough with emotion. I watched her betray people I care about. When Silas told me about the conditional re-entry plan, I voted against it in the initial executive review. The room was silent. Harold had never mentioned that vote publicly. But she's shown up every single day, asked for no favors, worked harder than required. When a systems error caused compliance delays last month, she stayed until 8 p.m. 3 nights running to help clear the backlog. Unpaid overtime, didn't ask for comp time. Harold's voice dropped. Here's what changed my mind. 2 weeks ago, a junior analyst made the same kind of shortcut Madison used to make accessing a file outside normal protocols because it was faster. Madison caught it, could have reported him, made herself look good. Instead, she pulled him aside, explained why those protocols exist, helped him understand the risks. He told me later it was the kindest correction he'd ever received. Harold looked at each board member in turn. If we can't believe in redemption, real earned, demonstrated redemption, what are we building here? A company of perfect people who never fail, or a culture where people can learn, grow, and become better than they were? Tyler spoke next, the young analyst who'd sat with Madison at lunch her first day. I made a compliance mistake last month. I used an old template for a client report, didn't realize it referenced outdated regulations. Madison caught it during peer review. She could have sent it straight to my supervisor, documented my error. Instead, she walked me through why those regulations changed, showed me how to set up alerts for updates, spent an hour teaching me the research system. Tyler glanced at his notes, then looked up. My supervisor told me later that Madison flagged it as a learning opportunity, rather than an error. She protected me while still maintaining accuracy. That's leadership. Emma Collins, a department head with 15 years at Ravenscroft, added her perspective. I was skeptical, very skeptical. I supervised 3 people who quit during the scandal, good people who couldn't handle the uncertainty, the fear that our culture was corrupt. She paused, choosing words carefully. Madison is the most diligent analyst I've supervised in 5 years. But more than that, she's changed how my team thinks about ethics. Last month, someone raised a gray area question about client data sharing. Before, people would have shrugged and done what was easiest. Now, because of Madison's discussion group, they pause and ask, what's the right thing, not just the legal thing? Rachel projected the anonymous employee survey results. 67% of staff who've worked directly with Madison report feeling comfortable with her continued employment. 23% are neutral. 10% remain opposed, citing principle they believe the crime itself should be disqualifying regardless of change. That's a values position I respect even if the majority disagrees. The board invited Madison to speak. She entered wearing the same style of professional but inexpensive clothing she'd worn since her first day. No designer labels, no status signals. Her hands trembled slightly as she walked to the front of the room. I don't deserve to be here, she said quietly, but I'm grateful you gave me the chance. I destroyed trust. I hurt people who never harmed me. I broke laws. I endangered livelihoods. Her voice didn't waver. Those truths don't change. I can't undo them. I can only acknowledge them fully and work every day to become someone different. She paused. A woman in prison told me something I think about every morning. She said, you can't unbreak what you broke, but you can build something new with the pieces. That's what I'm trying to do. If you allow me to stay, I'll spend every day earning that decision. If you vote no, I understand, and I'll carry these lessons wherever I go. Either way, thank you for teaching me what real accountability means. She left the room. The door closed with a soft click. Stephen Caldwell broke the quiet. This is unprecedented. We're voting on whether someone convicted of federal corporate espionage can remain employed at the company she betrayed. Sarah Whitman spoke thoughtfully. But isn't that the point? If change is real, genuinely, demonstrably real over sustained time, do we honor it? Or do we say that one mistake, however serious, defines someone forever? David interjected, "It wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern of calculated decisions over months." Which is exactly why the change is remarkable, Sarah countered. Changing a habit is easier than changing character. She's shown changed character. Rachel surprised everyone then. "I want to propose something unconventional, a long-term development path." She brought up a new slide, a 5-year timeline. Years 1 through 2, Madison continues in her current role. Standard performance reviews. Years 2 through 3, if her performance and ethical conduct remain exemplary, promotion to senior analyst. Years 3 through 5, intensive ethics training. Graduate certification in organizational ethics. The next slide made several board members sit up straighter. Year 5, when I retire, consideration, not guarantee, but consideration for the ethics director role. The room erupted in murmurs. Stephen held up a hand for quiet. "Rachel, that's bold. It's strategic," Rachel said firmly. "Who better to lead ethics than someone who learned the cost of violating them?" Madison's greatest failure could become her greatest strength, but only if we're willing to invest in that transformation. David Parker shook his head slowly. "That's either brilliant or insane." "It's both," Stephen said, "which is why it might work." The vote came after 20 minutes of debate. 9 hands rose for permanent employment. 7 supported the conditional leadership development track. No opposition. "Ms. Ravenscroft, the board has voted to grant you permanent employment status," Stephen announced when Madison returned. "We've also approved a long-term development path that could in 5 years lead to consideration for a leadership role in ethics if you continue to demonstrate the growth you've shown." Madison's eyes widened. Thank you. "I won't let you down. You'll let yourself down if you do," Stephen said, not unkindly. "These standards are higher than what we hold others to because you have more to prove." "I understand," Madison said. "Thank you." That evening at the Ravenscroft home, Silas, Jennifer, Marcus, Madison. No champagne, no elaborate celebration. Jennifer had made pot roast comfort food from when the kids were small. Madison held up her small cubicle nameplate. "I'm keeping this. Reminder of where I started over." Jennifer brought out the photo album pictures of young Madison fishing with Declan, holding up a small bass with gap-toothed pride. "He'd be proud of the woman you're becoming. Not the woman I was." "No," I said. "But that's the whole point. You chose to become someone different." Marcus squeezed Madison's hand. "The nonprofit's hosting a community health fair next month. Could use volunteers if you've got Saturday free." "I'd like that," Madison said. "Thank you." Later that night, I stood alone on the back porch, pocket watch in hand. October cold bit through my sweater, but I needed the air, the quiet, the darkness broken only by scattered lights across the riverside valley below. The watch ticked steadily. I traced the engraving, "Time reveals all truths." 2.5 years ago, Madison had burned a check for $52 million. She'd lost the money, lost her freedom, lost the easy path she'd always assumed was hers. But she'd found something more valuable, something Dad had tried to teach her all along. I remembered his video. "Character is the only asset that lasts forever." "You were right, Dad," I whispered to the night. She had to lose everything to find what truly mattered. Inside, I heard Madison's laugh, genuine, lighter than I'd heard in years. Through the window, I saw her helping Jennifer clear dishes, Marcus showing her something on his phone. An ordinary moment, a gift. The pocket watch ticked on. The company was thriving. Marcus was changing lives through his nonprofit. Madison was rebuilding her life one honest day at a time. And somewhere in the gathering dark, in the whisper of autumn wind, through bare trees, in the steady tick of the watch in my pocket, I felt Dad smiling. They say time reveals all truths. Grandfather Declan knew that better than anyone, and his final lesson took 2.5 years to fully understand. 2 years and 10 months after Dad's funeral, we gathered to dedicate a memorial garden in his honor. October 24th, 2025. The site occupied a corner of the Ravenscroft Industries campus, where Dad used to eat lunch outside on warm days watching the riverside below. Over 200 people attended, employees who'd worked with him for decades, community members whose lives he'd touched, scholarship recipients who'd never met him but carried his legacy forward. The garden featured benches engraved with his sayings about integrity, a small fishing pond stocked with bass, and at its center, a bronze sculpture of a pocket watch, open to show the engraving "Time reveals all truths." The dedication plaque read, "Declan Ravenscroft, builder, teacher, believer in second chances." Marcus spoke first, standing beside the watch sculpture. "Grandfather taught me that wealth is a tool, not a trophy." The Ravenscroft Community Health Initiative now serves over 2,000 patients annually. We've opened 3 mobile clinics, trained 40 community health workers, and helped hundreds navigate insurance systems that felt deliberately designed to confuse. He paused, looking at the bronze watch. "I inherited money, but Grandfather gave me purpose. The difference between those two things is everything." Marcus announced a $5 million expansion grant from the company foundation, matching funds Dad had designated for community health before he died. The crowd applauded. I saw tears in Jennifer's eyes. Madison spoke next. She stood at the small podium in a simple navy dress, no jewelry except the watch I'd given her 2 days earlier. "I don't deserve to stand here," she said quietly. "But Mr. Ravenscroft believed everyone deserves a chance to change. I'm donating my entire first-year salary, $40,000, to the Declan Ravenscroft Scholarship Fund. It's a fraction of what I owe, but it's what I have. Grandfather left me a legacy I didn't know how to value. I lost it and found something better. I'm trying to become worthy of the chance all of you gave me." The applause was genuine, not polite. I saw Harold Carson nodding, Rachel Green smiling. After the ceremony, our family gathered privately in Dad's old office. I'd asked Madison and Marcus to stay for something important. "There's something you both should see," I said, pulling out a preserved photograph from Dad's safe. I handed it to Madison. She stared at the image, the $52 million check made out to me, Silas Ravenscroft, the one she'd burned at the will reading. I burned your check," she whispered, shame and confusion crossing her face. "I destroyed what Grandpa left you." "You burned a photograph," I said gently. Dad had multiple ceremonial copies printed. The actual trust documents were held safely at Benjamin Shaw's office the entire time. Madison's face went pale. "So I burned nothing. I thought I was—" Her voice broke. "I thought I was punishing you, proving you didn't deserve it." "You burned a symbol," I said. "The inheritance was never in that paper." I showed her the documentation. Benjamin had preserved meeting notes from weeks before Dad died. Declan's handwriting, print, multiple copies of the check image. "I want to see who focuses on the paper versus who focuses on principle." Madison laughed and cried simultaneously. He knew. He knew what I'd become. And he was testing whether I'd destroy something that belonged to you just because I was angry. "And he believed you'd find your way back," I said. Marcus shook his head in wonder. "Everything was a test. Even the thing we thought was the test was a test." "That was Dad," Jennifer said softly. Layers within layers. The company had thrived. Revenue reached $280 million annually. We'd grown to 3,400 employees. Industry publications named us a top workplace culture 3 years running. Harold Carson had accepted the CEO position when I moved to board chair. Rachel Green was training Madison personally, The 5-year plan was on track. That evening at the Ravenscroft home, I called Madison into Dad's study, the same room where his will had shattered her world 29 months earlier. "I want you to have this," I said, holding out the pocket watch. "Dad, no, that's yours. You earned it. Grandfather didn't give this to someone perfect. He gave it to someone who understood what it meant." I opened the watch. The familiar engraving time reveals all truths, but I'd added a new line inside the cover, earned through change, October 2025. Madison accepted it, tears streaming. "I'll carry this as a reminder not of what I inherited, but of what I almost lost. That's exactly why you're ready for it," I said. Late that night, I stood alone on the back porch, looking out over Riverside. The Memorial Garden lights glowed softly in the distance. Dad had left me $52 million, but Madison had thought the test was about whether I deserved it, whether she could punish me by destroying it. It never was. It was about what she'd do when faced with anger and entitlement. She'd burned a photograph of my inheritance thinking it was power. She'd lost her freedom, her reputation, her place in the family. And in losing all of that, she'd found the only thing that mattered: her character. I could see the futures unfolding. Marcus would expand the health initiative to 3 cities, complete a graduate degree in public health, get recognized nationally for his work. Madison would become ethics director when Rachel retired, earn an MBA in healthcare. Ethics becomes someone who could say, "I know exactly how good people convince themselves to do terrible things, because I did it." That kind of credibility, earned through failure and rebuilt through integrity, would make her one of the most effective ethics leaders in the industry. The scholarship fund would grow to support hundreds of students. The ethics program would spread to dozens of companies, not because we marketed it, but because integrity, as Dad had always insisted, was the only sustainable competitive advantage. Real wealth isn't in bank accounts or stock portfolios. It's in who you become when everything else is stripped away. It's in building something that outlasts you, not because you put your name on it, but because you put your values into it. Inside, I could hear the family gathered around the dining room table. Madison's laugh, genuine, lighter than I'd heard in years. Marcus explaining mobile clinic logistics. Jennifer's voice warm with contentment. I stepped back inside. The pocket watch sat on the table like a compass, pointing not back toward what we'd lost, but forward toward what we'd become. Madison picked it up, traced the engraving with her thumb. "Time reveals all truths." She looked up, caught my eye, smiled a smile that acknowledged the years of pain it took to understand those 4 words. Then she set it down gently with the reverence of someone who finally understood what they were holding. Dad's lessons weren't confined to rooms or gardens or bronze sculptures. They lived in Marcus, choosing service over status. In Madison, earning back trust, one honest day at a time. In a company that had learned integrity wasn't about avoiding crisis, but about how you rebuilt after. The engraving was right. Time had revealed all truths about Madison's character, about mine, about what really mattered when the money and titles and expectations were stripped away. The real legacy was sitting at the dining room table in simple clothes, wearing a pocket watch she'd finally earned, ready to carry forward a lesson she'd paid dearly to learn. That was worth more than $52 million. That was worth everything. Looking back on everything that happened from the moment Madison burned that check to watching her walk out of prison 2.5 years later, I've learned that family betrayal cuts deeper than any business scandal ever could. The worst kind of family betrayal isn't about stolen money or broken contracts. It's about watching someone you love choose the path you warned them against, knowing you can't save them from themselves. And when family betrayal happens in your own home, you question everything you thought you built. But here's what I'd tell you: don't make my mistakes. Don't assume that love means protecting people from consequences. Don't confuse mercy with enabling. I spent years watching Madison drift toward entitlement, telling myself she'd eventually learn, but learning requires teachers willing to let students fail. My father used to share grandpa stories about fishing trips, about patience, about how character reveals itself over time. I thought those grandpa stories were just nostalgic memories from an old man who loved his family. I didn't understand that every one of those grandpa stories was a lesson he was planting for the moment when we'd need them most. The pocket watch, the memorial garden, the scholarship fund, all of it was him teaching us what mattered long after he was gone. God teaches us that mercy and accountability aren't opposites. They're partners in restoration. The hardest thing I ever did wasn't turning over evidence to the FBI. It was accepting that the most loving thing I could do for Madison was let her face what she'd chosen. Sometimes stepping back is stepping up. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is trusting that people can change when they're given both consequences and compassion. If you're dealing with family betrayal right now, I want you to know redemption is possible, but it can't be rushed. Character isn't built in comfort, it's forged when everything else is stripped away. My father understood that before I did. I wish I'd listened to those grandpa stories more carefully the first time. In my view, wealth means nothing if it doesn't build character. Success means nothing if it costs you integrity. And the greatest inheritance isn't money. It's the wisdom to know who you are when everything else is stripped away. What's your perspective on this? Have you faced moments where love and accountability had to walk together? I'd appreciate hearing your thoughts in the comments below. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Thank you sincerely for following this journey to the end. A brief note. The stories ahead contain fictionalized elements crafted for educational reflection. If these narratives don't align with what you're seeking, please feel free to explore content that better suits your needs. Grace and wisdom to you all.